Planet Water Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of A Water With. I'm the personal water sommelier, Martin Riese, and obviously I have Michael Mascha, my co-host, with me. Hello, Michael, to Texas. How are you?
Hello, Martin. How are you? I think we're going to have another great show today. And I think if you start a bottled water brand, you're very, very brave. But I think you're even a little bit more braver if you attempt to have a portfolio distribution. I think that's really, really difficult. So we had a couple of interesting conversations over the past couple of weeks, and we have another portfolio distributor here, a very brave person.
Now, that sounds like very interesting to me, and I know it has to be a little tricky for me today, for the listeners and for everybody else, because we already know when I'm saying, Michael, how are you? I'm talking to Michael in Texas. The tricky part is that we have a Michael today in the old world in Great Britain. So I will say, hello, Michael, to Great Britain, to the old world. How are you over there?
Hello, Martin. Hello, Michael.
Hello, hello. Everything is good?
Busy, thank you. It's been a very busy period for us with COVID lockdown and the challenges that we've had and people's insatiable demand for hydration during this period.
I think that's interesting. Obviously, it's terrible to say COVID helped you because I think it's a terrible pandemic and this is very, very sad things happening around the world. But obviously, people need water and people are very eager to drink water. So tell me a little bit about what changed in your business model over the last 6 months. And first of all, what is actually your business model? I think that is even more interesting at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. We have companies from around the world who buy from us because it's very convenient to buy a selection of products with a single point of collection. And that cuts down on transportation costs. So even though it might be more cost effective to buy from a producer directly and collect from their factory, and you might then have to have minimum order quantities, for example, which ties up your capital. And then you have to consolidate that onto a container, and then you import it to your final destination. In many instances, our wholesale customers find that it's convenient to consolidate their shipments with the stock that we already hold. So it's one point of collection, and logistics is a large part of the cost of the water or soft drinks that land on your table. So that's one aspect of our business. Another aspect of our business is restaurants and hotels, mainly in the UK. And for them, we provide bottled water and soft drinks and a variety of requirements. Their interest is led by a perception of the benefits of a product, i.e., this product delivers charitable donations to the third world, or this product looks nice and it complements the decor in my restaurant, or this product contains beneficial minerals that are valuable for my customer. So there's a spectrum of buying requirements there that we have to be sensitive towards and anticipate. And lastly, we have aquaamore.com, and this has operated since 2009, and we deliver to people's homes around UK and Europe. And we generally sell by the case. So someone will buy a case of a product as it comes, and we either deliver that on our own vehicles in London and the surrounding areas more or less, or with a third-party courier. So we repackage it into air packages and we send it out via someone like UPS. That's what we do. So that's what. And additionally, we're a resource for being a certified water sommelier. People approach us with various demands with questions, knowledge, those kind of associated conversations as well. So we're a reference point as well.
So really, really interesting. And I'm just being reminded, if I look behind you, how happy I am that fine water sells a story, and how easy stories travel, and you don't need a warehouse for stories. So I'm very happy I'm in the story business, and it looks really impressive, the arrangement. And it also shows people how difficult it is to become a portfolio distributor, and that what is actually very heavy has a much lower value per weight. So it's a really, really challenging business. And I think you can tell us many stories about that. But what I wanted to ask you is, you're a certified water sommelier, and we have now more and more companies, distribution companies, brand becoming water sommeliers. So do you think that's really important, that you not only sell the water, but also have the knowledge of the water and be able to communicate that properly?
Ultimately, Michael, it depends on the question that's being asked. And, you particularly are very skilled at communicating that message and the difference to people between a reprocessed product that is safe to drink for hydration, and a highly regulated product that fulfills minerals via the medium of H2O. And there's a big difference there, and the EU knows it. And I think people in continental Europe know it because of their culture, but people in maybe the English-speaking countries don't necessarily know that or appreciate it as part of a culture of wellness. So it's something I feel we have barely even scratched the surface of. And just to be a disruptor, I don't like the association with the title water sommelier, even though I have the accreditation, because I feel as though it implies that we try and replicate or piggyback off the value of the wine industry, when actually it's a much more nuanced and different acquisition of knowledge and texture recognition than wine is. Wine is a completely different affair. And so I think that makes people even more wary of the message that may have to be delivered.
I like that you're saying this, Michael, because I had a big problem in the beginning in 2005. When I started that whole concept in Germany with my water menu at the restaurant First Floor, the Hotel Palace, I was not considering myself a water sommelier. I said to him, yeah, I'm a thirsty guy. I'm a person, a water expert, whatever you want to call it. But then I realized the guest had a problem to understand what I'm doing. And that was the tricky part. So the media started actually the wording water sommelier. They called me water sommelier at one point in Germany. But then I realized, because when I said, no, I'm more like a water expert, they thought I was working for the Department of Water and Power. They didn't have the relation to the restaurant business. And now these days, I realized it's just easy, and I understand you, and I totally get your point. And I'm the person as well to say, no, they are wine sommeliers, and they're like highly professional, obviously, in the business of wine. Yes, it sounds crazy to have suddenly a mustard sommelier, a water sommelier, a wheat sommelier, what we have in West Hollywood as well. So they're using the term sommelier for other things now. But I think language is evolving. And I think that might be my take on it now, because now I can't rebrand myself. I am a water sommelier, and this is like worldwide known now, the term water sommelier. Even Wikipedia has this name now as, oh, there are other sommeliers than wine sommeliers. So I don't want to start the idea of, oh, let's rebrand and let's have something completely new as a hydro whatever expert or whatever you want to call him. Because I think that people understand when you're saying the word sommelier, the new generations don't think about just wine anymore. It's more about, oh, it's a person who has a profound knowledge about something. That is more like the new term for sommelier. Yes, it rooted, obviously and clearly, into the wine business, but I think involved now over the last 20 years more like into a term of there's a person who knows a lot about one particular stuff. And obviously for us, we have the attachment of always water in front of us. So we're not a bottled water sommelier, we're a water sommelier. That's always the thing as well. That's the reason I have in my water menus as well LA tap water or West Hollywood water. in there as well, because I believe that whoever drinks water in my restaurant should look at the water menu. And they don't need to buy and purchase bottled water. They might be want to have the water for free from the tap. And I don't have any issues with that, actually. I'm the last person who will say, oh my God, you cannot drink tap water. When somebody asks me, hey, Martin, I like to have my tap with ice and lemons, I'm more than happy to come with a bottle of filter tap. I'll pour it for you. I will put ice cubes in it and whatever my guest wants. But I think that's like the idea of a sommelier. I don't know how you think about this, Michael, in Texas.
You pour it onto their lap.
So, but I'm thinking, I agree with Michael in London, or with myself, so to speak. I agree with Michael. For the longest time, I did not use the term water sommelier myself, and I actually didn't like it because it was too limiting. Absolutely agree with Michael. And same thing happened to me with Martin. People didn't understand what I'm doing, and you get the label attached to you. And I was fighting it for a while, but after a while I said, you know, I give up. And I think it also has something good with it, because the term sommelier has equity. People understand what we usually mean by it, and by attaching the word water in front of it, people have now an understanding. So I think it less of a label as more of a description, so people can figure out what we're doing and what we're trying to do. But let's see, you know, nothing is fixed. Let's see how this ends up in 10 years and how we call our profession in 10 years.
My view is that sommelier sounds pretentious because it's a French word, and French words generally, they have an air of pretension about them. And I don't like that, because it already creates a distance between the knowledge we've acquired and how accessible it is for someone else who wants to achieve that. And the second issue I have is that it has the word water, and it's not really telling people anything new other than it's wet, which doesn't tell people anything about what we aim to achieve, which is these are products of the earth. Water is a universal solvent. It absorbs minerals on its journey to the surface, or not, depending on where the origin is. And it's then bottled. And then guess what? Those minerals have a textural impact on your palate. And with training, actually, not even with training, innately, with guidance, you can recognize your innate recognitions of how the minerals affect your palate. So, for example, for anyone watching this, maybe in the UK, someone will have a preference between Evian and Volvic. And that's a very typical. So really, I've been thinking about this a lot. And the term I really want to develop for use in the UK, so I want to be the pioneer of it and litmus test the idea to see how innately it's recognized, is the term aqua mineralogy and aqua mineralogist, to describe this more unique category of approaching the experience of how minerals affect a water on the palate. That, for me, is the essence of what it's about.
No, I agree with you, definitely. And again, like, I think it will be hard for people now to understand, like, first of all, the concept of like a water sommelier was completely mind-blowing for a lot of people, and could not even understand the idea of like there are people out that thinking that water even has taste. Let's start even with that. So let's go even back on this round, because I still have it here in America that a lot of people think like, come on, Martin, it's water, it's H2O. And we saw it on the last appearance, what I did on Netflix, that people suddenly realized, wait a minute, there is more into water than just H2O. They could not even believe this. And when I see like the famous actress Anna Kendrick saying like, you blew my mind, then you already know how less of knowledge is actually there to the most basic beverage we're engaging on a daily basis. And I think it's even more important because the more people we're training and the more people we have knowing about water and the more people is really starting to rethink a little bit water, I think the better it is for this planet. because then we will start to think, oh my God, water is way more important than we might be thinking. We should not run out of water. Water is a human right, obviously. That's what I'm strongly believe. Water, the water right should not be privatized, especially not in undeveloped countries, that suddenly water companies can make tons of money with that by selling their water to their own citizens. So there's a lot of, like, I think, the dark side of water. And the more people know knowledge, because we all know knowledge is wisdom and wisdom is power, the better it is for this planet and the better it is in general for the people.
So I think I agree mostly. I find it funny that you mentioned that the word sommelier in French is a little bit pretentious. But of course, if you want to call it aqua, it's Latin. And some people could say, also, going back to Latin and talking in Latin is a little bit pretentious. But I really get your point. What I'm trying to say, and I also like that you say this distance. You mentioned the word distance. And if you look at both Martin and myself in the Fine Water Academy, the thing we really, like to train our candidates is there should not be a distance. We should be open. This should be fun. This should be engaging. I think, so we want to move away from the wine sommeliers of the 80s. I'm old enough to remember those people that were very snobby. They always let you know that you didn't know enough of the wine, that he knew much more about it. And sometimes they always try to embarrass you in front of the group you were. So talking to the wine sommelier was something most people didn't look forward to. And I hope Martin and I, what we're trying to do with our candidates is to make this much, much more open. So my approach would be maybe not to rebrand the term water sommelier, leave it, but give it a new meaning. Almost rebrand it by not changing the name, but changing what people experience when they heard when they listen to the word water sommelier and what they see in the restaurant, how water sommelier behaves. And I think Martin knows this better, but also if you talk to wine sommeliers nowadays, they're much, much more different. They're much more open. They're much more engaging. So right now, I would not be embarrassed and stand next to a wine sommelier because I know they have the same attitude as we have. So that's why I still like the word, but I think this openness, this overcoming the distance is very important.
I think there's also an issue of semantics as well. So if you'll join me, or entertain me for a slightly deeper dive into this idea of water sommelier, distance, how impenetrable the concept is to people. It struck me as well that there's no language for water. There's no dedicated language to articulate the unique effects that a water has on a palate. And when I started Aqua Amore with my brother in 2007, I came across a book called Fine Waters by a person that looks remarkably like Michael Mascha. And in fact, it was by Michael Mascha. And in that book, he talked about mouthfeel. And no one had ever spoken about this before. I'd never recognized it. And it really opened my eyes to the concept of a water actually is different to a wine because taste is a misnomer. Taste is something that some waters have, very highly saline waters that obviously smack you in the face. Martin gave the people on Netflix a glass of the naturally carbonated water from Catalonia called Vichy Catalan, and that punched them in the face, didn't it, Martin?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Now, not all water has a taste, and that is really what throws people off. So you have to work backwards from that and understand that actually the minerals possess the water with texture. And there's no language to describe the texture given to water on the palate. And I attended a seminar at the University of Oxford. I was invited by a gentleman called Professor Charles Spence, and he worked with a famous UK-based chef called Heston Blumenthal, who used to run, who runs 3 Michelin star restaurant called the Fat Duck, and he is a pioneer of molecular gastronomy in the Ferran Adrià style of cuisine, and he helped him develop concepts for that. And I told him many years ago, I was working on a taste association of water and wine called Minerals Terroir. The initial question was, does the water affect the experience of wine? And as we tasted more and more, we actually realized there was a whole complex range of how a mineral water affected the experience of wine on the palate. And yet the wine world was very resistant to this. They didn't understand, they didn't want to know, they didn't want to engage with it. They were that, in fact, a wine sommelier from Chester in the UK even wrote a piece in Imbibe magazine criticizing what we were doing and associating the pursuit of trying to understand more about the relationship of water with wine with water shortages in the third world. And his pseudonym was, or his nom de plume was, Ivor Water Shortage, he said. He wrote it under this pen name. And of course, I know who it was, but that sums up the sort of resistance to it, that people dismissed it. And I suppose that also painted my attitudes towards, I don't want to be replicating what sommeliers do, because sommeliers are also and I want water to be a very unique thing, hence the concept of aqua mineralogy. But I digress a little bit. My point about going to this seminar with Professor Charles Spence, he invited a variety of people to present that he'd worked with. And one of them was a chef that ran an experimental restaurant in London. And he had two dishes. And one of them, he put round, globular, gelatinous pieces on a plate. And the other one, he puts angular, crispy, tactile things on a plate. And he associated them. And I'm going to try this. I've never used Zoom before, so I apologize to the viewers if I get this wrong. You haven't got screen sharing. Okay, right. So there is a concept, a psychological concept called Buba and Kiki. So if anyone wants to Google this while they're watching this call, it's Bouba and Kiki. And they are two shapes. One is globular and soft, like a fried egg. And the other one is crisp, angled, and looks very jagged. And he asked people to associate what they tasted with the shapes and the sounds. And it struck me like a eureka moment that I am looking at Evian and Volvic here. This is the difference. Whereas previously I'd been creating water menus and telling the sommeliers there to put like Evian, like Volvic. So any water that is bicarbonate led and has a very viscous, milky, thick texture on the palate, like Evian. Anything that is cool when it first hits your tongue, and cool when then you first swallow it, and it's refreshing, and it feels like you've just drunk from a mountain spring, or like you just played a game of tennis, and you are really hitting the spot, like Volvic. But that's the only words I had, because there's no suitable words in the English language or any language that I know to describe it. And I say that because at this water sommelier certification course that I did at the Humans Institute in Graf Elfing near Munich, there was quite a wide range of nationalities, and they spoke Mandarin, they spoke English, European languages, and none of them had a word to describe a different texture. So that's why I have a fair idea that a suitable language doesn't exist. So I immediately recognized that one of them, and I'll leave it to the viewer to determine, and then you can put the comments, if you don't mind, they can put their thoughts in the comments. They can taste Evian and tell me, is it Buba and which shape is Buba? Or is it Kiki and which shape is Kiki? And taste Volvic and tell me which one you think is Kiki in the shape, it's a triangulation, and which one is Buba or Kiki. I've got myself confused now. And which is which. And if you don't have Evian and Volvic, try it with another water, even something like Vichy Catalan, and try and ignore the carbonation and feel the viscosity or the effect, and tell me which is which. So recognizing this made me think that now there is a path that's opened up to me as an aqua mineralogist to develop a semantic concept to introduce to the world, to be able to identify what a water feels like on my palate. And for me, a water can be Buba, and a water can be Kiki. There's also one other one, which is the effect magnesium has on your palate, which is this tactile elasticity like Vitel or HEPA, and you put your tongue to the tip of your mouth and then you can feel the water being squeezed and there's resistance. So there's a third one, but I wish to pursue this concept alongside my philosophy, if you like, of aqua mineralogy. I wish to pursue the concept of a language that helps people communicate their ideas, Martin. So people say to you, Martin, I like Buba waters, or I like Kiki water. And you say, oh, well, that's because Buba is characterized by calcium and bicarbonates, and it feels like, or Kiki is characterized by whatever. I'm trying not to give the game away to your audience so that they have their own view on this. But it's without a suitable language that people can validate their innate experiences, there'll always be doubt and fragmented communications and, oh, how can I tell a water's different? How do I describe the taste? How can I? Yet people go for the same brands. I really like Fiji because, I really like Evian because, and they try and describe it to you, Martin, don't they? They try and describe it to Michael Mascha. Oh, I don't know why I like it, but I think it's soapy and I like this, I like that. And you're trying to interpret what they like and hear, and we need to give them a language. We need to give a language to water and create a terminology for water so people can link their experiences to an idea and a concept and then communicate it. And then when you communicate it, guess what? Hashtag Buba, hashtag Kiki, I can explain what I'm experiencing. You're freeing up the idea. And then that is when we'll be able to start the building blocks for, okay, now let's create a map like you do in whiskey. And in whiskey, you have smoky, floral, whatever it is, the space side, all different regions. And you map out the different whiskey on the charts, don't you? So if you like an Islay whiskey, then head this way. And if you like a Glenmorangie from head this way. So with water, it would be more like that. So I would say, well, look, if you like Vitel, then try Contrex and try HEPA, because there are even more of that. But if you like Vitel, but you also want something a bit more, head towards Tonon, head towards Solan de Cabras, and it's giving them this guide of, what the experience is. That's how we make it accessible, guys. That's my view.
I like really what you're saying. And there are two points to it, I think. First of all, yes, I totally agree with you. The terms of to describe water is clearly not there yet. That is clearly a fact that somehow in our history, in all the language, what you just said, somehow we missed to bring words to the most fundamental beverage again on this planet. It's crazy that it is like that. Nobody came up with the idea. It's the same, like a lot of people always think, oh my God, in Germany, we always have words for everything. So yes, we have a lot of words, but there's still some words missing. As an example, when I'm, there is no word for I'm not thirsty. There is no word in the German language for that. There is no word for it. There is a word for I'm not hungry. It's called satt. I'm done. I'm full. I'm filled. Done. Huh? But when you're not thirsty anymore, there is no word. What is almost crazy, in my opinion. Maybe it has something to do because everybody's dehydrated all the time, because we always need to be thirsty. Maybe that's the fact why we don't have a word for that. In my family, they created a word for that for many, many years ago. My father taught me that word, I would say for 25 years ago already. It's called Stud. So in our family, we're using this term when we say, I had enough of water, or I had enough of wine, or whatever. I'm saying, I'm Stud. And everybody understands in our family. Nobody else on this planet will understand that. It's kind of like our secret little word, what we created. What I think it's hilarious and funny that we're talking now about this, because this is exactly what you just said. We're missing words. We're missing something is happening there. there is a very, very famous movie and obviously book, The Perfume, The Story of a Murderer by Patrick Süskind. And this story is, and I'm addicted to this story because this story tells you about a person who's fascinated of smells and aromas around the world. And he has a very, very special nose. So he can detect way more aromas out of a product than everybody else. So he says, you don't smell this? And he's like, what do you need to smell? It's glass. No, but it smells like glass. And he smells the glass. And everybody's like, are you crazy and are you nuts? There is no smell to glass. But he's saying, no, there is clearly a smell to glass because I can smell it. So, and I think that is the kind of like the concept, what you're saying as well. Not everybody can detect the differences in water right now. We were going to teach them, we were going to train them. But the problem is because the majority of people and even the language doesn't have words for that, it's really problematic to even then describe the taste when we don't even have the proper language for it. So what you just said, like this is the same what happened in my restaurant all the time. Hey Martin, I like Fiji. Because that's pretty much my question. What I have then as a sommelier when I'm going to the table and they're saying, okay, Martin, you have 26 different mineral waters. What am I gonna choose now? My first question is, okay, do you prefer still or sparkling? Like 50-50, like right there. I'm trying to narrow that thing down. And then they're saying, okay, I want a still water. You're saying, okay. Second most question is always like, what are you drinking at home? Like, what are you drinking in a regular base? That I understand kind of like their taste profile. And from there, I'm trying then to help them out. Like, for example, they think, oh, I love Boudoir because I love tiny bubbles. I think, great, maybe Hilden would be interesting because, yes, it's lower in minerality, but it's a little bit sweeter on the palate, but has almost like the same effervescent effect. And then they're like, oh, that sounds interesting. What kind of wine you're drinking? Oh, I have this heavy red wine. It's like, perfect, don't do Boudoir anyhow, because the minerality will overpowering the tannins of the red wine. Do actually Hilden, because this will actually way better. I would even go to a still water, but when they want sparkling, you cannot force them to drink a still water because you think as a sommelier, it's just better to do the still version. That's for me as well, why I know you're maybe not in favor of so many sommeliers, because that's the same project what I have. I hate to be taught by a sommelier in a restaurant. It's nice to get their wisdom, but I don't want to hear the sommelier telling me, you should not do that, or you should not do that. So that's the wrong concept of sommeliers. And I think these kind of sommeliers are done. They're over. It doesn't exist anymore. Sometimes in small restaurants, you will still see them. They're completely full of shit, in my opinion. Sorry to use even that kind of language. But no, a good sommelier is a sommelier who helps the guest find their wine, what they like, and not what I personally like. That's the same for me as a water sommelier. My job is to find the water you enjoy and not what I enjoy. So therefore, all this question I'm getting on a daily basis so much, what is the best water on this planet? It's like, I don't know your taste profile, so I can't talk about that right now. The best water on this planet is the water you like and you will drink a lot. That's for me the best water on this planet. So that's a quite interesting concept there.
The only thing I disagree with you on a very specific point is that I don't think people have to be trained. I think simply everyone's innate recognition has to be awakened so that they can recognize that what the palate recognizes is legitimate. Because right now, all right, fine. Look, I'm drinking this water and I'm drinking and I'm drinking and I'm drinking. It tastes like water. Actually, this one, Whitehall, is the most, is one of the most natural, clean. When like Alan Ducasse chose this for his restaurant, for example, and Heston Blumenthal chose this for his restaurant, and the sommeliers, when they taste it, they just say it tastes the most like water. It's calcium, so it's very soft and it's very nice. Okay, but in isolation, that's that, isn't it? And then I put this down and I go and I try another water. And what do I have to compare it against? It's wet. Yeah, it's wet and it's doing a job. But if you have two next to each other and you say, look, notice the difference. And then they're like, oh, there is difference, but wow. It's like those cartoons where they have empty bubbles, boop, 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 boop. Yeah. What do we fill those bubbles with? And because they're empty bubbles, they don't think anything of it, you see. And the mineral analysis here doesn't mean anything to them because they don't know that calcium makes it soft and pillow-like, on your tongue, and they won't know that bicarbonates will make it viscous and thick like milk. They won't know this, so that's why at the very prima facie. Well, let's talk about an on-off light switch. You have two options, guys. There's Buba and Kiki, and water belongs to one or the other, generally speaking. And find your preference. And then from there, let's start to build and accumulate, put it out in the world, and let the world populate it, because all we trying to do is kickstart an idea with our curiosity. But for me, my unique perspective on it is that we're never going to tip the momentum so people can own it for themselves, rather than look at Martin Riese and wonder and say, wow, this guy, he's like that guy who can recognize the cars from the way the doors slam. Every car has a unique characteristics when you slam the doors. I could never do that. So moving Martin Riese from that guy who we can never replicate what he does because he's just got this, he's a super taster, right? Moving it from that to giving them ownership of it and saying, you know what? Here is a words that you can put onto your recognition. And now you tell me what you prefer. Now you come into my world and recognize that I'm not mad. It's just that the world never gave us appropriate semantics to communicate this universal feeling, you see? That's it. I don't know whether the Romans had a word for it or not, because they obviously used to grade aqueducts according to the quality of the water, and they set up camps. I don't know whether they did, but between them and now, we've lost this finesse of appreciation.
Lost in translation, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Michael,
you're right. Sorry, one more thing, Michael, and then I will go to Michael Texas. When I said needs to be trained, that is exactly what I actually wanted to say. And you used the better word for it, what I used. It was more like training of showcase. It's not like training in like, oh, you need to go to the Fine Water Academy or you need to go to Dermans or to other schools. It was more for me like we need to showcase or give the people the idea of there's more to discover than just water. Because that is like what I wanted to say actually. It was the idea of because still a lot of people getting even bashed sometimes on social media when they're saying, I think Fiji tastes like that, or I think Evian tastes like that. Because they're saying, you're crazy, you're stupid, water does not have taste. And I think that is the overcome first, and that is what I wanted to say with training, to educate the people in general, yes, water has taste. We can agree on that. So now, obviously, and now we need to find the proper wordings, and I'm so with you there, and I think it's an incredible, amazing conversation. Now we need to find the right terms to actually describe water. Because that is even tricky for me sometimes. A lot of people will be maybe surprised. They say, what? Martin Riese is saying he doesn't know how to describe his waters now? It is really sometimes for me tricky. And Michael Mascha in Texas agrees definitely on this, because when we're doing our water tastings, like all around the world, and I have like 100 to 120 different waters in a row in like 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes even for me, there's some water spy there where I'm saying like, oh my God, it gives me not just a taste, it gives me like a memory back in my brain. Where I'm saying like, I feel right now when I'm drinking this water, I feel I'm on a beach on Sylt in 1997 when I met that girl. That came in my mind by one particular water. And this is crazy that you think about this, but I think that is the whole idea of water as well, because water does not bring a taste to the table. It brings the whole momentum and a feeling and a story to the table. And that is for me the fascinating part, why I'm sometimes like looking at a glass, I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I'm finding the Holy Grail right there. And that is for me the most interesting part to be a water sommelier.
I find it fascinating, Martin, that you invented a word for I'm not thirsty. I've never heard it. I think it's the first time that this has been public, and it's fascinating for me. So I agree. The words to describe water is really difficult because we don't have so many data points. If you look at wine, you have many, many more data points, and you can make much, much better association with words because of the more limited data points. I'm not saying they're not there, but they're limited compared to wine. What's important for me with the description of water is one thing, that it shouldn't be binary. It shouldn't be this or this. I think it needs to be organic and poetic. That would be, for me, very important for describing the experience. But the thing I noticed in our conversation here, and maybe for the first time, and it's a really great conversation, it's really good to talk with people and digging really, really deep into the subject. I just noticed that both of you are very, very interested in giving people what they want. What do you want? You like this, I give you another one I like. And I have to say, I hope it doesn't reflect on my personality, I was never interested in giving people what they want. I always wanted people to try something new, have a new experience. Let me share an experience with you, independent of whether you tell me or you like it or not. And I don't know how you guys feel, but I think that's something for me that I'm appreciated by a sommelier. It doesn't, what kind of wine do you like? And I give you another one that's like the one you like. I say, surprise me, give me something new. If I go to a restaurant, I don't want the chef to cook the food I like. I want him to cook something new for me. And so that for me is maybe a slightly different approach, but it's not one or the other. I'm sure Martin does the same thing, giving people something new, especially with carbonation levels. If you like big bubbles, use small bubbles. And finally, I want to mention this word flavor and taste. We're using this word and we use it almost interchangeable. And I want to, because we're digging so deep here, I want to make this maybe a little bit more, empirical. I personally think flavor doesn't exist in the world. Flavor is a computation in our brain that's based on the input from taste, from our taste buds, from the mouthfeel we get from the sensation in our mouth, and the smell. So I think water has flavor, water has mouthfeel, water has smell. And the computation that you make in your brain out of that, I would like to call flavor. So what does this mean? It also means that when people say to us, oh, you must have a very special tongue or very special taste, but because you taste the difference, I beg to disagree, because I think on average, every human has pretty much the same input from the senses, being the mouthfeel, the taste, and the smell. It's the computation in your brain that makes the flavor, and that distinguishes a sommelier from a non-sommelier or a layman that doesn't have the same computation. So I just wanted to clarify those two things. And I don't have really a question for you, Michael, but I'm sure you have many, many things to say.
Well, I think that personality traits that you're a slave to is the reason that you started all of this off in the first place, because you were the first one really to probe that question and to try and consolidate a disparate body of knowledge. So, that's entirely your prerogative to pursue that. And, I think we'd be worse for not having that. So, just really thank you, Michael, for carrying on to interrogate. But I don't necessarily think that the pursuit of a semantic base to describe the texture of water is at the detriment of experiment or the recognition of a spectrum of mineral effects and whatever it is. But I definitely think it's well, hey, you're my Germanic Austro pals, Ludwig Wittgenstein, he had something called a hinge proposition. And the hinge proposition is a concept where an idea just changes your understanding fundamentally of the same subject matter. And for me, I think that for me, Buba Kiki is potentially a hinge proposition when it comes to people's engagements with water, because it's the same thing, it's the same minerals, it's the same experience, but the association of what that experience is with a concept, with a term, will awaken people's association and feeling of ownership of that subject matter overnight. For me, it has that very powerful potential. And that's why I'm keen to explore this idea further and seed it and introduce it universally, because it's something that almost all languages can get to grips with. And if not, perhaps we can assuage it or modify it or develop it. But I don't think that the introduction of a concept to categorize one set, even in a Venn diagram or not, of water texture experiences means that, look, guys, you're either Buba or you're Kiki. For me, it is the initial introduction of an idea that switches people on to the recognition that, hey, I'm experiencing two different things. One is a sensation, and it's really quenching my thirst. They're two completely different types of water experience, and somewhere in between. But without that, they have nothing. They just have Fiji, Martin, please, or give me whatever you got, Michael, and wow, something zany's going on, but I've forgotten about it. You see? So, but with a semantic concept, with a semantic term, they can take that feeling away, and they can associate the words with the shape, with the feeling, and they can recognize it. And by recognizing it, you can repeat it. And by repeating it, you can communicate it. And by communicating it, you can spread the idea and take ownership of it. So really, I think we've got to try and pursue this if we're serious about trying to get people to wake up to the fact that waters are inextricably linked to minerals, and minerals are detectable on our palates, and we can detect them. Everyone can detect them. Martin,
yeah,
everyone
definitely.
Can.
I think this is the key concept of that. I strongly believe that everybody has a taste, and everybody can detect the taste differences in water. Obviously, in my little media things, what I'm doing all the time, I'm trying to fight obviously water. What you earlier said, Michael, punch you in the face. I need to do that people understand right away what's going on. Because I just have a very small limit chance to, I don't want to even say convince people, but to just showcase and to prove that water can be completely crazy in taste. Yeah? And then that's the reason I'm always using, obviously in the Netflix episode, we had way more water tasted. We had actually 5 or 6 waters, and just 3, I think, was been shown. So we all know it's been angled down. Therefore, I need to showcase to people right away, oh my God, that tastes crazy. The same pretty much what Michael in Texas is doing, what he said, I want to bring stuff to the table what people don't expect. That is pretty much what I'm doing in the media. So I'm bringing waters over there where they think that is completely crazy, Martin. I never ever thought about it, that a water can have a TDS of 7,400 like Roy. I have here water from Romania with 28,000 TDS. That's disgusting to drink. You don't want to drink that. It's just it's not tasty at all. I was in Germany last year in a spa town where they had, fascinating for me, a whole room with just different taps, and the different taps were the different spring sources of this natural occurring source. And they had big stories about it, about how much water you should drink from that spring on a daily basis that has actually an impact on your body. Fascinating stuff. There's a video out there. I'm trying on my social media. I'm trying one of these waters. I had to spit it out because it was so high in iron. I thought I had blood in my mouth. It was disgusting. And then it said, please drink 2 liters on a daily basis of that. It's I could never do this. I could not even swallow one. So, but that is the whole point why I'm always thinking it's funny and hilarious that people are still saying on this planet, but water has no taste. It's
it's fascinating, yeah.
Yeah. To get back to your point, Michael, how important that actually is to bring back, or to bring actually terms and wordings to describe a water. So it really triggers me, and I really want that we are like continuing this further offside of like of this podcast, because I'm really interested in this. And I think there is something what we clearly have together, that we can bring even more attention to the consumer. And you're absolutely right, and I said it earlier as well, how important that is, because when you have the knowledge, you have the power. Because when I suddenly know how to describe a water and I have the right terms for it, I can be actually the person who says, hey, listen, this is Kiki or something else. So I really like that. I really think it's fascinating. Michael in Texas, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. Words are really important. We need to find the words, and we both, and Michael in London, we're struggling to find the words to describe this. I would just like to frame, let's look, where do these words need to fit into? And we know the waters we are selling, they can be used for hydration, but they're not meant for hydration. They're meant to have an experience to be enjoyed. And what is the context? Where do you enjoy those waters? You enjoy it sitting down on a table. So I think the words that we're looking for need to be Epicurean, they need to be organic, and they need to be poetic. I think, in my opinion, that's really, really important, because we're already struggling with words that are not. And we're describing acidity. Do you really want to sit on a table, eat a nice steak, and someone tells you this is a water that has a very high acidity? It doesn't sound right. And then you use words like pH. Even the word minerality also implies already a little bit of a technical component. So I would be in big favor of finding new words. I don't think the words should be binary, left or right. The words need to have a very high resolution, and they need to have a very high sampling rate, so we can really accommodate an organic entity and not making it an organic entity which is very complex, open-ended, into a digital realm where you have left or right. I don't think left and right will work. I think very high sample rate, very high resolution in the words. And my bigger things, the words need to fit onto the table, because a sommelier works on a table. This is where people experience the water. And I think that's going to be important for me. But I agree, finding more words moving forward then would also be one of my priorities.
Well, give me 6 months and let me tap into the academic side of it, because I think it needs to be a psychological-based language. I'm going to start from the roots of Buba Kiki and see if we can explore outwards from there and find related terminology. I think I think the beauty of the Buba Kiki concept is that there's a shape associated with the sounds, and then us as water, aqua, sommelier, mineralogists, we can associate those shapes and those sounds with the experience on the palate, and then we can extrapolate that, say to people, that's because it possesses these minerals. Yeah. And once it possesses these minerals, that's it. The cat's out the bag. Now minerals do a job. And that's really what we want people to know. Minerals do a job, and they do a job on your palate, and you can recognize it. That's the secret to it. And that's about as simple as it gets. And then when people then say, wow, okay, so mineral waters, okay, look, you say an experience. I have a slightly phased view on that. I think that the ideal scenario is if an individual was to have a range of waters available to them, which they can get from Aqua Amore or any other local variety of water supplier. But I would say to people, I'd love to create a mixed case or recommendation where I'd say, have 1 glass a day of Vitel, have 1 glass a day of Vichy Catalan, have 1 glass a day of something else, and then that's your calcium requirements, your magnesium requirements, your bicarbonate requirements, your silica requirements. And, just by having a glass of each of these 3 or 4 different waters a day will give your body the minerals it requires. And guess what? The minerals in water are the most bioavailable of any foodstuff. That's a fact. therefore, that's the value of mineral waters, and that's how you can see the benefits. A nice one, for example, is silica. Silica is the only thing known to flush aluminium toxicity from the body. And aluminium toxicity is something that they associate with Asperger's, Alzheimer's, and you need 30 milligrams a day, which you can get from a liter of Volvic or a half a liter of Fiji. You see? So have half a liter of Fiji a day, which is 2 glasses. Have a glass of Vittel a day or 2, something like this. And then you have a reason to consume mineral waters. And guess what? They're pleasurable and they're natural. So I think that's really you're talking about just Epicurean, and I'm talking about actually they're a way of accessing minerals in a very effective, efficient, and pleasurable way.
No, it comes to a function water at that moment. And I think that is a very interesting concept. And this is, I think, what we went through to at least the latest Netflix series, that we introduced the concept of, hey, by the way, your water can actually help you. And that is the takeaway of this, because I see it on my social media channels, because that is like the biggest takeaway what people had is, oh my God, I can actually drink water and